Okay, so imagine you've made the perfect manga. You have the story, the characters, and everything is put together to be the best manga that anyone has ever read. You're now finally ready, and you've put all of your hard work out into the world. However, your story is just a lone book in an ocean of other stories, and something that you find that there's one big problem. There's an invisible wall. No one is picking up your book to read. It is left alone, passed up by other books for some unknown reason unbeknownst to you. Now all of your hard work and a gold mine of new adventures and ideas are closed off from the world because no one's going to read your book. The competition is fierce. Nothing is flashy enough to catch the reader's eye. And worst of all, no one will see the world that could have been. And that brings me to the topic of today's video on how to make a cover for your manga. Let's get into it. But before we get into this video, if you don't know me, my name is Vandal. I am a self-published mangaka and author of note. My goal is to help other manga and comic book artists with their art and their writing skills to craft the story of their dreams. So the manga bash has ended and concluded. I want to thank everyone who entered, did anything that helped the contest in any way. I really appreciate it. Info on what's going to be happening next with the contest in terms of like how the winners will be picked and when we will actually be streaming it and showing you guys all the contestant winners will be out soon. So be on the lookout for that. So hey there guys, I know it's been a while since I've uploaded, but one of the things I wanted to talk about is that I've released my second book. So to commemorate that, I have made a Kickstarter for it, and I would really love it if it was successful. So if you can, do check it out. It would really help support me and the channel. You know, give it a look, and let me tell you about my book. I know it rhymed. Let's get into it. Besieged is about a mystical gate that opens, and all of the creatures that you can imagine fuse with humans, and one of the most powerful creatures, the Besieged, is powered by anger. Now our main character Bomo has made a promise to his mother that he wants to keep. However, the problem is that his anger gets in the way of that, and he needs to find a way to keep his anger in check so he can keep his promise to his mother. But also there are a few shenanigans going on at school that are not going to allow that to be so easy. So will he be able to keep the promise to his mother while also keeping his anger in check? Can he do it? Find out. And if you liked how that sounds, you can definitely support that project on Kickstarter. Consider backing it, share it, whatever you do helps. And also, at the end of this video, I have a little nice teaser for you guys. Please stay to the end so you can check it out. Alright, now all the ad stuff is out of the way. It's been a real long while, y'all. I know, since my last video, go check out that last nice collab video that I did. But I wanted to top off this manga making series because I think one of the most important things that happens with manga making is that you don't think about it, or maybe you do. I don't know, I'm not you. But it's thinking about making a cover for your manga. And I think this will overall help solidify the process in the end because you do need a cover for your manga. So today, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be drawing the cover for my latest one-shot Besieged that I just talked at length about. And this is going to be on how to make your own cover. So let's drop into it. So when making a cover, one of the most important things you got to do first is take your time. Now, the reason why this is the last in the series of making manga is because I tend to leave this for last. Because I want to finish making the manga, and now you'll understand better what your story is and have a better idea about how you want to make the cover as you take your time and leave it for last. That's what I like to do. The other nice thing that's going to happen is that as you go through the process of making manga, your art will inevitably level up because you've been doing so many pages. Whether it's been 3 pages, whether it's been 1 page, you're 1 page better than you were before you started that cover. Now, you can do whatever you want. You know, I'm just a little fly on the wall just giving you some recommendations. But I do recommend leaving it for last because some of the things that are going to happen is that your ideas are going to change. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, as we're going to talk about a little bit later, but one of those things is to take your time and really think over what you want in the end because you'll have a better idea of your story overall. But once you have an understanding of how it is, you know, completing your manga and getting everything done and getting to the cover and taking your time, let's get into actually what we need to make the cover. Paper. No, I'm joking. We don't even get to the paper yet. You need to do some research because you want to get even more inspiration because you'll have an idea of how your manga is going to be based on whatever genre it is. So you want to look at some other things. So research, and I know I put this into every video, bear with me here. One thing that you need to understand how to do is to see how other people do it. Now, when you're looking into it yourself, you're probably going to do a quick Google search and look at your collection of other manga that you have, and you'll see how they're traditionally done. Now the part is where we have to break it down. Now, one of the things that happens traditionally with manga is that there's one character in the front, and it's probably going to relate to what's going on inside of the volume. So maybe you'll have the main character of Dr. Stone or Jujutsu Kaisen or Shaman King, whatever it is. That character is going to be emblematic of what's happening in there. So one thing that I'll say to note, get it? Note? No? Okay. Is that generally manga volumes come out after the series has been going on for a little while. And it would make sense, after some time the readers have been reading it weekly and they've gotten to understand who the characters are and they're cool with them, and they've had other different types of art during that time. It makes it a little bit easier for the mangaka to not have to draw like a crazy illustration for their main cover, because now people have that attachment with the character and they know who they're probably getting into once they're about to buy this volume. And it would also help and make the mangaka's life easier because they've been drawing like a mad person for weeks already. I'll explain why I think this should change later in the video, but we'll leave it there with a pin there for now. Alright, so this is Future Vandal here, and one of the things that I did in my own research while I was making this video and editing it is that I looked at a lot of the covers a little bit more in depth in terms of manga covers, and one of the things that I noticed is that in the beginning they tend to be a lot more simplistic and geared towards just the main character, whereas when the series goes on for like a really long time, they tend to be a little bit more intricate in terms of what they showcase on the cover. So that's just a little update that I wanted to put here, because I feel like that manga covers do just as good a job as comic book covers, and I couldn't just leave that unsaid or make an addendum in another video. So I would like to also reiterate that manga covers do just as good as all the things that I'm about to say in the rest of this video. Let's get back to it. Now let's take a quick look at comics. Now I think the great thing about comics is their dynamic composition and their ability to tell stories in the cover. I think it's more in your face, but I like the way that it looks, and you'll see great art and compositions all around when you take a quick Google search on it. I'll go a little bit more in depth on some of these ideas later, but let's get into this now. So now, when you're doing your research, I want you to ask yourself some simple questions. Why does this work? Why do I like it? Why? Please ask yourself why. Make a list of what's working for you on the cover. That way, when you start to develop your own and have your own ideas, you know what you want to incorporate inside. But I think you'll get a lot of inspiration from covers. For me, I was inspired by Hulk while drawing this cover for Besieged. I wanted that visceral anger, so I looked up a lot of Hulk things to get where I wanted to. He's kind of like my anime version of the Hulk. They look the same, right? In your research, also look up what other creators do in the genre that your book is in, because an action cover will look a little bit different from maybe a romance cover and that feeling that you want to evoke. We're going to talk a lot about feelings later. That said, you also want to stand out. So looking a little bit different or looking at other things that are outside of your genre that can help incorporate into the genre you want to make to help yours stand out a little bit. Like we talked about in the intro, where there's so many books out there, you want to make sure you stand out. And a way to stand out is that word that we've talked about in another video, and that is the chimerification of things. So taking a little bit from everything and then, fusing it all together. But once you have an understanding of like what your genre is and what exactly you're going for, you can really dig deep into that research and figure out what you want to do. Now, after that's done, one of the most important things that we all do as mangaka is we tell stories. But your story can't be told just within the pages of your manga. It also needs to be told within the cover of your manga as well. So I like to think that with all the research, you want to try and tell the story with your covers. And I think that even though this is a manga channel and I'm partial to comic covers, is because of their narrative storytelling in one page. Now, looking at it really gives you an idea what the story will be about. Now, you can have this cool stoic character on a manga page and it draws the readers in. But I think having an actual like story going on in your cover is something that's important. Think of like a religious or nativity scene kind of thing. Like we see a whole bunch of things going on and it kind of gives us like the cliff notes of our story. And that's why I find it important when someone looks at your story, they're gonna wonder, what is this book about? Even if your cover isn't directly about the book, but make it be interesting or something that'll make the reader question why and what is actually going on. So for instance, I'll use my cover that I'm working on right now. But first I want you guys in the comments down below to let me know, what do you think my story is about? Even though you probably already heard it in the beginning when I said it, so actually doesn't matter. So in my actual cover, I have the main character Bomo in the center because the story is about him. I have these flames that are touching all the other characters that are involved during the story. And if you notice, there are some hands that are reaching out and some other characters that have sinister faces. So there's a bit of mix between like what's going on the top and what's going on in the bottom. And I don't want to give too much away, but this is what I had in mind for the story elements of my cover as I was making it. Even though, to be honest, I was really sweating making this cover and I wasn't sure how I was going to do it, but it actually came out really well. That's an aside. But these are also subtle ways, you know, to have hints at foreshadowing about what your story is going to be about. Now, one thing I always will advise is that it's great to be intentional, because when you have a goal, you want things to be clear and you want to say something with the story that you're trying to tell inside of your cover. But for me, I also wanted to set it apart from other manga because, as we saw earlier, manga tends to only use one character on the cover. And you can get a lot from that character on the cover because over time you're going to read the story and you're going to learn that maybe something interesting is going to happen with this one particular character. But for me, I like to involve everyone in my dynamic as much as possible. Now, once you have your paper and pen and you've done your research and you know the story that you want to tell, let's think about this one thing that actually has to relate to art. Oh my gosh. And that is composition. Now, while thinking about the story elements that you want to tell with your cover, you have to have an eye for composition, especially if you're doing more than one character or object or anything in a scene. So composition in art is basically how you arrange objects to make them, you know, look interesting and flow well. So I would recommend, you know, playing around with how you want your characters or character to be arranged in your cover, because the more characters that you include, the more difficult it can be to arrange your characters in an eye-pleasing composition. A good method for looking at composition and getting an idea is movie covers like Marvel or even fighting game posters. They tend to have a lot of characters, so you can get a better idea of how you want to composite your shapes or the ways you want to add your characters in. So I'm going to use both Note and Besieged as examples on how I used composition. So let's start with Note. For Note, when I was arranging the composition, I wanted to create this sense of balance. So I used the idea of the circle and how I wanted to place the characters within that circle. And it was a lot easier having 4 characters and having everything in a loop and everything emanating from the center, because it all allowed for that balance to play a role. So with the characters all balanced in the 4 quadrants in the top and the bottom and the left and the right, this circular composition also helped play into the narrative, and that's that storytelling element I was talking to you guys about of the story, but it also plays into the composition of the drawing. So also having the top and bottom approach, you first brings your eye to the top, at least this is what I wanted to intend, and brings your eye to the bottom so you can see the contrast of the light and the dark, and it keeps your eye moving like in a circular motion around the cover. I know this is a whole bunch of artsy stuff, but this is like a little peek into my mind of like how I think about things, so just bear with me here. Also, a note here from the composition is that you want to try and make it not flat. Now, you can make it flat, of course, but, you know, just have a reason behind that, because, you know, being intentional is important. So with that said, just make sure that your characters feel modular, like they're 3D. You don't want them to feel like they are on this piece of paper. So that's why on the left you can see here is that I have Caesar, the main character's hand, peeking out of the picture, you know, just to make it feel a little bit more orbital instead of just, you know, like a flat circle like a ring. It feels more like a ball, so something's actually coming out. So when you're thinking of your composition and you have those ideas, think about something that will pop. Thinking about pop is something we're going to talk about a little bit later. So now for Besieger's composition, I wanted to fit 10 characters in there. So I went for an X composition, which is kind of funny because the Roman numeral 10 and X. Did I do some like 3D chess, 4D chess? I don't know. Anyways, now before I get into this arrangement and explanation of compositions, the use of shapes and lines or arrangements for your compositions will really help. So here I used an X and before I used a circle. And there are diamonds and different shapes that you can use, etc. Just play around with that and the arrangements of shapes and lines, and you can see how your characters will fit into those shapes, and it'll better help your compositions look the way that you might want. So back to Besieger, it was a little bit more difficult with this composition because I had 10 characters and it was a lot to fit. So with the X, it allowed me to line up the characters better and arrange my characters to fit neatly. I still kept the idea of balance, trying to keep the characters in each of their different quadrants properly. I think they're about like 2 in each corner. And then we have some in the middle. So we have the 2 main characters, one in the center and one in the lower half. And you could even say that there's one in the top middle as well. But I'm just gonna count 10. We're not gonna count that little figure in the back. So the X helps direct the center of the composition and also tell who the story is about. So your eye should go to the center because it's about the main character, and it'll help extend outward to the other characters to show you that it's about them as well. At least that's my idea from it. I hope that's what you got. If not, let me know in the comment section down below. But also, in the idea of composition, there are multiple characters that you want to think about, and that is the size. This is very important. So it can denote how important they are. This allows your reader to know who's the most important and what characters might not be. It'll also help you play around with different compositions and change the size of something when you think about the importance of how it relates to the story or how important you want it to be in your cover. So maybe if there's a villain, they might be the biggest part of your drawing, or if there's somebody who's a side character, they might not be as big as maybe the main character. But composition and storytelling go hand in hand because of the placement of the characters really can help that drawing look really good and also tell a story as well. So think about that, play around with the shapes, play around with character placements, and you'll have some great composition. All right, I know this is a little bit long, y'all, but bear with me. And one of the most important things that you want to do in terms of making your cover is you want to evoke emotion. Because before we talked about a little bit about genres and telling a story, now what you want to do with having a good composition and being able to tell a story is get your readers to really want to open that book. You want them to get them feeling something before they even like read your story. And you really want to evoke emotion in your potential readers. Now, what that emotion is honestly up to you, but make it in line with your story. Just like we talked about those genres earlier, make it maybe intrigue, sadness, anger, something that'll make someone feel, because a couple of these things will happen when your reader sees your book. They're going to start to wonder what caused this emotion on the character, or what they're going through, or who these people are, because the feeling is established and the questions are not that far behind for your reader. Now I'm going to circle back to Western comics because they do an excellent job with creating emotions out there and showing scenes that may happen later in the book, or giving that brief summary with their front cover page. Sort of like how I use the Hulk and having that bombastic energy that you might want to see a little bit more about, like why he's so angry, or maybe even looking at the somber tones of Batman or why it's drawn like that, or the uplifty cheeriness of Superman. Okay, I know I might be reading a little bit too much into this, but emotions are important. So you want to get your reader primed and ready to feel something so that can make the art more expressive. Now, I don't want y'all coming for me in the comments saying like, oh, Vandal doesn't really like manga no more. He's changed. He's back. He got a second book. And now all he cares about is Western comics. Nah, but I'm not going to leave manga out of this whole conversation of evoking emotion. However, it's often relegated to there being just one character and that real cool factor of what's going on that cover. It's made to look cool, and I think that's great, and there's a place for it, but I think that Western comics really hit on that story driven part. But you know, let me know if there's some covers that really evoke that emotion, or something that I might have missed, you know, something that might be a really good facet to add to cover, something that I could maybe clear up in another video. So once you get all of these elements really rolling in your cover, you're gonna have to make it pop and stand out, and there's a lot of ways to do this. Now, with all of the things that we've stated previously, manga is a visual medium. So you're going to need your manga or a comic to be different so it can stand out. And one of the ways is to make it very dynamic. And you can use real art. And I know that is actually a vague statement, like what is real art? I mean, just make art that is different from what your competition would be making, if that makes sense. But if you've ever done your research and practice, you'll know what that means. I hope you know what that means. Okay, now one of the ways I'm talking about this is in terms of like you're a book on a shelf. So you can think of this as digital as well. When you're looking through like a manga reading site, there are a bunch of different covers. How can yours stand out? It's kind of like YouTube thumbnails. You want to make sure that yours stands out because you want people to click on it and read it and see that hopefully everything that's on the cover is kind of just like, that tantalizing message that's going to be inside of your book. All of this will go into that, and you want to make sure that even though you're hooking the reader, that the content's delivered, just like this video. I know I've been a little rambly this time, but I missed you guys. All right, moving on. Okay. So lastly, one of the more important things for like example, a physical release is making maybe your book shiny, taking a look at like Platinum M that does like this nice shiny thing that I've never seen on any other book. Maybe there might be, but it definitely stands out. Oh, even Assassination Classroom, that's a good one as well. They're so shiny. And another way you can also think about it is texture, how raised the text could be. Maybe you could even have a furry book. I wouldn't recommend it because you probably couldn't get the jam out of it. Digitally, you can show like that standout thing with maybe a GIF or GIF, I don't know how you say it, of the cover, or maybe some subtle animations that move around the cover. I don't know, some way that you can make it stand out. Be creative, but make it stand out some way so people will want to read it. Just like the people who are watching this video, think of it as the thumbnail for your manga. Okay, so now I want to make a video on this. A full actual video is like how to create your name and logo for your manga, but I think this fits into the cover section as well. Your logo needs to be legible, something that you can actually read and in line with the artwork of your cover. I mean, it could also contrast if that's something that you're going for, but I think they should complement each other in a nice harmonious way. So what I mean is that your placement is important because when you work on your artwork without having your logo and placement in mind, it can cover important parts of your art and parts of the story that you're trying to tell with your cover. So another idea is maybe that you can integrate that logo into your art so it's a part of the art, and thus there's no competition for the space. Now, placing depends on your composition and where it's in line with how your artwork is. And maybe it's the focal point of your art, maybe it's at the top, maybe it's at the bottom. It honestly is up to you. Now, the design of your logo can be whatever you want it to be. Just also to reiterate again, make sure that it is legible. Even though I needed to follow this rule for my own comic, because, don't be like me. I think Note makes a lot more sense in terms of its legibility, but Besieged in itself is a little bit squished and can be hard to read. So especially if you don't know that word, it can be like a whole mess. So I should have made it a bit more clear, but I like the style, and if you like your style, it's okay. There's rules and then there's no rules. I make up the rules, and so do you. Anyways, moving on. You guys already know what you want to make with your story and what you want it to be called, but think about something striking or something that when people say it really sticks. Because one of the things that happens to myself is that people always associate Note with Death Note, which kind of sucks because now I'm trying to battle against Death Note and there's no winning in that. So just think about a name that will make people just really wonder about it. Maybe something that could be about redemption or retribution or the Holy Order, some cool words like that apply to your actual story. Or maybe it could be even the name of your character. There's tons of ways you can do it. It's something that'll cause intrigue, that'll again make people want to pick up that book and open it. All right, so let's bring it in with this last part, and that's talking about the variants. Now, I said at the beginning that you need to take your time, which is actually true. You should. However, you may have already actually made that cover in the beginning before you even started your manga and or comic, and let me introduce you to the idea of variants. So variants are basically the idea that there are different versions of your cover for that volume, so they can look wildly different. Often the covers are done by other artists as a way to, collaborate on a project, or for someone else that may enjoy that particular style or actually just love your story and want to draw it out for you. But back to you. I'd recommend doing that first draft of your cover and then, doing one at the end as well. Even though I said you should wait till the end, that is my personal preference. But now I am an evolved human being who has made it to the end of this video. And now that I understand that you can also do it from the beginning and you can also do it in the end, because that's just more drawing and I want you to do more drawing. I'm joking. Or am I? But yeah, you'll start with one in the beginning, you'll get one at the end, and you'll have a lot of different options, and then you'll see what does better with your audience. You can test an A or a B one. It's kind of like just doing it with thumbnails. At most, you'll have at least two, and then you'll have one choice, but you'll make the better of the two choices. And you can have a differing philosophy on what your cover is then than it is now, because you'll change over time, and that's okay. But yeah, look at different variants and see what you can even do about collaborating with other artists that could, commission one to do it, or see if you guys can do like an art trade. I don't know what you guys do, but make those variants and make them cool, because everyone likes to have different options for their covers. Even though I don't, and variants don't run in my covers. It's one day, all day, baby. All right, let's get to the end of this video. So let's do a quick summary. Don't leave the video just yet. I see you clicking off. So let's bring it all together right here. And starting with, make sure, just take your time. Your art's going to grow as you create your manga. Take a look into researching how other people do their covers. Make sure that your cover is telling a story before the reader even delves into what your meat of your manga is. Think about how you arrange your characters with amazing and interesting compositions that you'll get across to your reader. Make sure that what you draw gives your reader a sort of emotional connection with the story and give them an idea about what it'll be about. Make it pop and stand out in a way that you can think about, and also have an idea about your logo and what it says and where it's actually going to go. And think about different cover variants, and if you got a friend, what they say, the more the merrier. But if you can take these, a little bit of what I've said here, and apply it to your own covers, your cover game is going to level up in ways that you have never even imagined. I hope. But yeah, guys, that's all I have for you today. But please, first of all, before we end this video, do check out the manga. I have the first couple of pages to read in the description for free. So, if you liked it there, please consider supporting the manga over on Kickstarter, because it's just started up and running. And, I want to hit that goal before the end of the month, or 30 days, or whatever it is. But yeah, help it out. I'd really appreciate it. And if there's anything you want to say, put it in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And if you enjoyed anything else that I said, and that I like, that you like, that I like, that you like, that I'm doing here, hit that subscribe button, like the video, hit that bell for notifications when you want to hear things that I have to say. But I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace. That was a long video. Like, I'm surprised. I don't know, y'all. I hope y'all liked it. I'm a little tired. I got a lot of work to do, but I'm really happy that I made my second book. Thanks anyways. I'll catch y'all in the next one. All right, bye for real. Bye for real. Bye.